I want some specifics this time. Let's talk about sustainable materials and sustainable products. Let's talk about them not just in whether they are saving our life on the planet, which is obviously quite a big deal, but let's just talk about them as kind of also as natural materials maybe sometimes, and their impact on people in the office, people in the workplace, productivity. So Derek, I know you've got some insight into this kind of wider area.
Yes, there was an interesting study by Cooper and Browning in 2015. They surveyed about 7,500 people, and the results of that was that with natural materials, wooden and so on, surroundings, and nature, natural greenery and so on, people, creativity, productivity rose by in the order of about 15%, something like that. So there's always been this thought that this was true, and I think they established in a very good survey. Now, since that time, there have been numerous experiments at Harvard and other places that have done detailed experiments, and which supports that point of view. Now, when you think of materials, I mean, just think what the impact, and going back to my multi-sensory thing, when you have a material in a building, it affects the surface temperature on the inside of the building. That affects your MRT, therefore your thermal comfort, as it were. It affects touch, the texture of the material. It affects sound because of the reverberation and so on that can happen from different materials and so on. And then there's the visual appearance, of course. You just the colour of the materials, where it's sort of like marble or a brick or whatever it is. So all of these things together make the look and feel of a place so important. And when it comes to sustainability, traditional materials like concrete and so on, which are sort of have a very high embodied energy, can be reduced by embediments. So if you put graphene inserts or fibers into concrete, you may know of concrete and things like that, where the embodied energy goes down. So now we can treat, from the sustainability aspect, materials with embediments like graphene, for example, and fine-tune the thing, decrease the embodied energy, and you have therefore sustainable concrete. So we're not going to lose those traditional materials, but we're going to kind of add to the stock that we have with this addition into traditional materials. There are then, of course, completely new materials, and again, coming back to natural things, if you think of lotus leaves and things like that, which can be used for clothing, can be used for linings and so on. So we're discovering almost by the month or so that, you know, natural materials shouldn't be underrated. They can be very valuable. The strength of bamboo, for example, and the very high buildings in bamboo is possible, you know. And of course the bamboo is very attractive. In one of my universities I visited in South Korea, you enter the university inside a bamboo corridor, and upstairs internal gardens. And it's all because they think that this is important in decision making. If you look at the new Daxia building starting in this year with our architects in London, you'll see that every floor of the 210-metre tower is full of plants. The Chinese are absolutely convinced that the work is showing that this is very important. And of course, we don't know, I don't know how the plants affect the sound. We haven't done any experiments on that, but this could,
it's got to help.
Which cross over into your area, because they're going to be diffusing surfaces.
And you've got the loose soil there as well.
And because you've got the variation of plant form, it might make quite an interesting acoustic environment.
Especially if it's a jungle version, which you were talking for. Just explain what a jungle version is, which I think, I mean, we can guess.
Well, the jungle version is just what Graham and I have been speaking about outside in the corridor. Rather than just put a plant here and there, It's recognizing that you can have plants sort of hanging somewhere. You can have them at different levels, not just like that, horizontal, but you can have it through the height as well. And we use the word jungle for this office. We did a PLP architecture. So it's recognizing the dimensionality of plants as well as the density is important.
I mean, those who are designing offices, sorry, you two, again, you're going to have to take your turns. Natural materials, are they called for? Do people want them? How much do they play a part in your understanding of a healthy office?
Huge. I mean, taking that one forward as well, I mean, healthy materials is a big thing. When we look at a project and we're looking at, sustainability and what the work environment and how the materials contribute to that, that is a big part of it. And usually that's within the look and feel that we go for tenant fit outs. I think we take it from two views though. We take it from one, the healthy environment that we're trying to create, and the other is of course the amount of carbon that's going into the materials that we're picking and where it's being procured from and how far it's travelling, and we have to try and analyse all of that data to understand that we're creating something as a sustainable piece. Mm-hmm. But we like...
How much are you doing reports on embodied energy?
We try. Our current aim is to do one for every single project, but we don't always manage that. We have software in-house, One Click, where we look through the specification and we take a number of design iterations. But unless a report is actually commissioned, we won't do a full study of it. We'll do initial design studies to have an understanding of what's going to be best for the project, but that's probably about
right. So it's a decision-making process, right?
Yeah, which we like to give to the client. But we love materials that are natural, that invite to the environment. Things like cork, where they don't take down the tree; they just peel off the bark. It's carbon negative. It will regrow. We look for anything that's we're interested in materials that are coming out in the market, hemp or low carbon bricks, or stone that's completely locally sourced as well as much as possible. So we're really interested in that and having that as a library, and that's what we build from, that we speak to sort of clients and tenants about.
And how do you arrange your library? Is it physical? Is it a series? You have a physical library. It's a
physical library. I mean,
so it's a series of shelves.
It is. We're limited on space, though, so we have people in the office trying to curate that, trying to switch it.
Chuck stuff away, you mean?
No, take it back.
Recycle responsibly.
But I mean, also when we do projects, we might have the ability to do a bit more in terms of reuse as well. When we look at the building, we often in projects there's commissioned a audit of what's inside the building, and sometimes there's very creative projects. We did one where we were redoing the lifts. We took one of the lift motors, which did weigh about a ton, resalvaged it, cut it, polished it with artisans, and made it into a desk with a glass lid, just so it's sailing over it. So we can have a lot of fun with what we find on site. Similarly with the concrete and trying to make things more sustainable, we're doing both in terms of sustainable concrete, and with one tenant who's a record company, we're taking their old vinyls, crushing that up and using that as the aggregate.
But they're just becoming more valuable.
They've assured us that they're not.
How fascinating. So you can use records as an aggregate. It's an internal, it's not a structural piece.
It doesn't do anything structurally. It will come to the surface.
So is your use structural? Sorry, this is just for my interest, this bit.
It reduces the weight and amount of material within what we're trying to create.
Okay, but it's kind of things like a desk. It's not holding up a 10-story building.
No.
Oh, just that's what I mean by
small bits of furniture within.
Yeah. Oh, really fascinating. So, Rob, do you find that you're talking about materials in terms of being natural and healthy, and is that a conversation you can have easily with clients?
I think it's a balance. I think we do have that conversation on every project. Similar to Graham, we have internal, we have our own internal sort of OMS in terms of we have a sustainability group. Those are there's a baseline fee that we try and bake in on every project now. So there is an element just from our own perspective, an element of resource to be able to support the designers and architects on projects. We have our own internal database that works online. It's all teamed up with our finishes scheduled. So,
and what does your database have information on?
So it can be the embodied carbon, it can be the source, it can be all the recycled content.
How do you keep it up to date?
We actually rely on we have good relationships with a lot of suppliers out in the industry. It's something that we're trying to gear up for to give back to the industry, really. Right. But we're still developing it at the moment. Yeah. But it does rely on it's one of those things. It's only as good as the efforts that put into it, and thankfully everyone does put a lot of effort into it. So we try and encourage that to grow with every project that we do, and there's the general maintenance and keeping that up to date. We have our physical library as well, so people can showcase sort of new products. And I think we try and discuss internally, we make sure those lessons learned are shared, because obviously when you do have new experimental sort of sustainable products, you have to be responsible with how those are used, in terms of if they're not, some will perform better than others. Yeah. We need to take away the ones that work really well and kind of champion those on future projects. Because, if you end up having to replace a cork wall or a cork floor every 5 minutes, it's unsustainable.
Every 5 minutes, definitely. Yeah.
So I think there's that approach. I think in terms of clients,
have you found that about cork, by the way? Because I know people don't use it for that reason sometimes, but I was at Sadler's Wells the other day, the new Sadler's Wells in Stratford in the Olympic Park, and they've used cork. I think it might be in the auditorium, which I thought was so quite high traffic areas, and I thought that was a really interesting decision, because we all know good, natural, etc. But also, flipping loads of people walking on it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the other thing, going back to your point, Eric, is I think there's also a lot to be said for the reference of a natural material. So again, it could be that you place, if there are concerns from a client's perspective, maybe if you say we're going to put cork all over the floor, they go, that won't last 5 minutes. We can put cork in other less, in less trafficked areas.
Oh, I thought you were going to suggest a vinyl with a pebble pattern or something, or a cork pattern.
No,
you mean reference as in a small area rather than a huge area?
I think there's a lot to be said about referencing natural materials, where they, just that reference alone gives you that feeling, potentially contributes to your sort of well-being within a space. And I think, again, we're seeing more, going back to the planting, we're seeing more of less of the filing cabinet planters, more of the immersive kind of environments to the jungle point that you made earlier.
I mean, I'm thinking that as Derek was talking about, there must be people out there who are making a living out of making these plants not have little gnats and not have, dying leaves.
There is.
Come to my house.
We've got a company comes round and wipes down all our leaves, and we're under strict instructions. Don't touch the plants. We'll water them. We'll replace them if they die, and they really look after them. It's there's an industry emerging out of this.
Yeah.
There's also been changes to things like how they compost them and things, and the different beds that they put in them now, which discourage the little bugs to live in there. Yeah. So it's moved on a lot, as you say.
There'll be wormery soon.
It's making me feel really hopeful. Hearing both of you, it's lovely to hear. There's a lot of climate anxiety going on, and when I hear that people are taking it this seriously, well, thank you. I'm just saying, making me feel really hopeful.
Well, I think that's a point. In terms of, it even goes back to the spaces we were talking about earlier on. I think there's with every project, there's going to be potentially more resistance on some, but we have the opportunity, and what we do is to challenge these things. Obviously there's going to be things like budget, time, all the constraints that everyone's used to. But within our role, this is why we always like to challenge things, because you may educate someone, or you may get someone on side to do something really impressive, really different, really innovative.
I mean, you're very privileged to have a discussion at the point of change. Not many people can take change, and then here you are with organisations saying we want change, and it might be a small thing, but you've got a chance for creating so much more. So I mean, it is very exciting.
I was just going to say, we're having to provide so much data now after we've installed our finishes, at the end of the project, we're having to give all our carbon data and various bits and bobs.
Only after? That's really interesting.
I think it's because people know. In fact, like you say, you've got a system, whereas you'll already know that the product can do it. So then we have to provide all the data afterwards. And actually, an interesting thing's coming up in 2026, this is going to be fascinating. So the EU are banning words and phrases being used in marketing like green or this product is environmentally friendly, unless you can provide this the certification and the data to actually prove it. So
have you had practices coming to you with a questionnaire? Because lots of practices I've talked to are doing the questionnaires now, which seem to be different for each practice.
They're
possibly
all slightly different.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're creating a super document.
Right. Okay. You can pull
that has
in
every single question we've come across so far.
Oh, really?
And we can use that because everyone's got their own system. So we can either give you the document or we can use our answers within our own document to populate your system.
Right.
It's good. Really good.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think that should all be in your EPC. But obviously it's not, because that doesn't ask for enough. Is that it? I mean, I don't.
There's other stuff falls outside of that, and it's not just about the products themselves. It's the companies. I think you might have an environmentally friendly product, but if the company itself isn't environmentally friendly, then so we started off with ISO 14001 years back and got the bug for it, and then we moved to work with Positive Planet, and so we were then independently certified as carbon neutral as a company, and then we built this place. And this place has got, the roof is covered in solar. We've got the environmentally friendly products throughout. We've got a really clever ventilation system as well. And that's been awarded the green plaque. So you know that it's not just our products, we're doing what we preach. Yeah, that's it.
It's interesting you touched on quite a few accreditations just then. I mean, I think other ones that are coming out, like B Corp, which is also much more focused on governance as well, which companies are promoting, which we actually do look at when we specify a product. But I think within buildings themselves, I think the two big ones, Well and Neighbours, for example, particularly Well, if the clients already sign up to that as an idea at the beginning, this is already driving a lot of the sustainability throughout the project. And greenery and biophilia obviously plays a big part in that accreditation, as does clean air, circadian lighting, acoustics. They're really interested in terms of the wellness and giving that to tenants, which gives the building a unique selling point and space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. And quite a lot of practices, architectural practices, a few are very proud of the fact that they have become B Corps. And I think there's a sense of that being a recognised across a whole set of different client bodies. It can be any type of company, whereas Well is for a building, isn't it? You don't get that for a practice, you don't get that for an acoustics company. And so having those kind of recognised across the piece is really helpful, because you can say, okay, they're being held to that standard. They're working towards, net zero is pretty hard to get to, but you have to be working towards it, and that's a useful thing to have. Shall we talk a little bit about neurodivergent employees? So I think this is a new part of the survey this year. So they make up a significant proportion of the workforce. And I think we all know the stories about sort of Silicon Valley. They make up a high proportion of the workforce there. So it's about thinking about inclusive workspaces that support their needs. 71% of employees with dyspraxia, 67% with ADHD, 66% with dyslexia, 62% with autism. So those percentages say their workplace is noisy. So I think that's higher than standard. And that 42% of employees with autism say noise negatively impacts their work quality. 40% of employees with autism say they need more quiet spaces for focused work. Is that a discussion that is being had when workplaces are being designed? Is it ever part of the thinking? Are you challenged to say, what are you going to be doing for those with different needs?
Do that one first.
I can do that one first. I'll take one for the team this time. I think it's the awareness is growing, and it has been for some time. I mean, I think we've started. This has become kind of like a bit of a hot topic for us quite some years ago now. And there's specific clients that we've had where it's been very centric to the brief, even to the point where we've sort of. It's been really educational for us along the way as well in terms of how we heighten what we perceive as what sort of well-being. So I think it's becoming more and more common, but I think we've had feedback on recent projects of would be looking at certain finishes, and the clients have come back to us and said, well, that might not be the most appropriate for this particular part of the business. So it's great to have that feedback and have that dialogue. So
do you get the sense that there are employee groups perhaps looking at some of your early designs?
Potentially, yeah. Potentially. And I think with some of the larger corporations, there'll probably be certain people with a focus and interest in those kind of things.
I think it's much easier to deal with the visual issues. So I think, obviously schools are very good at saying this is what we need acoustically, or new schools. But actually I would say that commercial tenants and landlords perhaps don't specify acoustically. No, okay. So you might see, oh my God, you're going to put red and blue and yellow all together in one go. That's difficult. Or those shiny colours have got problems. But you wouldn't necessarily get somebody saying, okay, well, that's not meeting the acoustic brief. They might say, how does it sound? And you then have to come up with that. It's also acoustic modelling is quite problematic, I imagine, unless you're getting acousticians on it. I think the thing that we found, or the thing that I've personally seen, it's more about the transition of, in terms of a space, whether it be light, sound, colours, vibrancy or softness. I think it's that transition to avoid anything too jarring. And I think that's kind of potentially the sort of the takeaway that I've had over the years is kind of where we have the sort of the wellness. We have accreditations now and things like that focus on the importance of having that variety, that choice. But it's also as well goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, where it doesn't work as simple as, well, we'll put that space there and that space there. There needs to be more logic about how these spaces are laid out, and to offer that transition between kind of ramping up to vibrant, noisy spaces. And also when we're in those spaces, providing refuge areas. So, that's where we can play with acoustics and light really well to be able to have those retreats in case there is a level of discomfort for any individual. Yeah.
I don't feel with a lot of our clients, neurodivergence is talked about enough. I think it really depends on a lot of the companies we speak to that have gone through their own diversity and inclusion processes and really, reached out to the company and everyone that works in the company and what their needs are, and being very sensitive and empathetic towards that. I think a lot of companies are still very traditional in the way they work, and it's a bit of a process. In terms of, we do challenge the brief as we go, and we do try, we talk about the subject matter. But it really depends on the company. We're working with one as a fit out, and everything is virtually the same colour from space to space, which you'd think would be difficult for anybody to see or differentiate, but they're very keen on it. That's what they want. So they've been very clear that's what they're having. But we wouldn't have thought from the first instance that would be a sensible approach to how you design spaces and how that would cater for different types of people. But they know the people they work with, everyone in the company's bought into that, and that's what they want. So it really depends on the people we work with.
Yeah. Is it something that you come across? Do people talk to you about that as an issue?
Not a huge amount.
No.
Not really. We normally get specified, and there's normally an acoustic consultant involved. Yeah. Where we do work direct, we've worked with some schools where they've had people that were, they actually wanted to have five-a-side football matches in a sports hall, and so we put an acoustic treatment. We had a an impact-resistant acoustic panel that we designed, so you could just crash into it. We had a school using it for boxing, kickboxing practice as well, actually.
Did it withstand the test?
It did, yeah, it was great. So they positioned these panels about 1.2 metres up from the floor, and the partially sighted kids were actually listening for the noise coming off the lower part of the wall, so they knew where the ball was. So acoustics are incredible things if you can get it right.
Yeah. Have you got any experience of work or research around neurodiversity?
Certainly at PLP Architecture, we had a seminar on this topic. I think it's a bit like, it indicates to me that flexibility and adaptability in design is really key, because some clients, like you said, Ron, will have that high demand. In other cases, maybe not so much. But if you've got spaces that are flexible, adaptable, then I think you can then cater for Asperger's or those kind of things and so on. Yeah.
So I've got a final question for everyone. It seems a bit soon, actually, to be honest. But anyway, we need to be wrapping up. So final question for everyone. In 2005, only less than 3 in 10, 29%, said their office space fully supports their return and productivity. So the real question, rather than the statement, is what's the single most important thing you think that has to be done to motivate this shift, to positively motivate this shift? So, I feel you might have some thoughts on this.
Many, but I'm trying to pick one, as you've asked us, and I'm going to say I'm all about the how. It's the communication. So including them in why we want you to come in the office, what the benefit is for you, and having that adult to adult conversation.
Yeah, I think your point about inviting was really...
communicate, give people autonomy and relatedness, and you're important and valued in this, why we're making this decision, why the space is here for you, and why we would come in, all in the comms.
Sure.
Rob?
I think the biggest for me, and coming at it from a design perspective naturally, is choice and variety. And I think that in terms of that 3% saying that their office supports the way they want to work and carry out their business and what have you, I think that
choice and variety. I mean, I know I said one thing and that is 2, but they're also, that's just like huge. Could you just, choice of spaces, yes?
Choice of spaces, yeah. But the variety of spaces in terms of, like I said, in theory, there is that opportunity for introduction of alternatives into the workplace now. We don't, the intensity of one-to-one working isn't what it used to be, and the attitude, as we've discussed, and what Laura's saying as well, is there should be that grown-up conversation about what spaces do you want in your office, whether that's socialising, games, or whether it's how you collaborate, how we sit down, or making sure that people have the opportunity to do solo focused work. I think that's the variety that we don't see of offices of the past.
Thanks.
Support systems, amenities, and environment. Environment in a multi-sensory sense we've discussed already. These 3 things give the occupant a sense that they're being cared for, that the management system is considering their needs. It might be the gym, it might be activity areas, it might be the food that they provide in the organisation, it might be the computer systems or whatever, and it's also the environment that you create. And there's no doubt about it that these 3 things if a company looks after those, I think if you look at the top 50 companies on the annual list that comes out, most of those do,
as in FTSE?
Yes, do those things well, and are successful, partly because their staff feel happier or more content or positive about the work that they do.
I think we can all miss how important staff are. I mean, some businesses, they are like 90% of the cost and 90% of the thing that wins the business. Exactly. So, yeah.
People, yeah.
Yeah.
Would anyone be surprised if I said acoustics? So let me, okay. So
you mean more than acoustics,
more than acoustics. So I think sorting the acoustics in a place is key. So if clients are not thinking about acoustics, or they're thinking of omitting the acoustic package on budget, see the big picture. The World Health Organization said that noise pollution was second only to air pollution. That was pre-COVID. And most people don't realize that actually excessive noise in restaurants, workspaces, can contribute to heart disease, diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and also contribute to weight increase as well, with stress as well. It's not a good combination. So if you can treat that, you're going to increase their health.
Increase the population's health, that would be a good thing just from a workplace, flipping heck.
There's a lot of choices in there. I'm hoping by saying it out loud I might arrive at the answer. I find it interesting that people prefer working at home than coming to the office. I think that needs to be looked at in more detail in terms of what does that offer more than the workspace can offer, because I think that's where the gap is, really. I think, the home environments I don't think are suited or well ideal for working anyway. You can't collaborate, you're isolated, internet connections, poor quality, not be able to have the right setup, desk space, etc. It shouldn't be an easy environment to work in, and I think therefore the offerings that is in the home, it must be amenity space, saving of money, the ease of life, the de-stress of it, all of those things needs to be thought about in workplace design, and how that offering can be greater than what has been given at home. So I think for me it is quality and amenity that's the thing that's driving workplace design at the moment, really, and agreeing with Rob, well, everyone really, those things do need to improve.
Yeah, it's a big face-off, and maybe people haven't truly understood that.
Yeah. And again in the comments, but that's a wonderful way of putting it, and these are all lovely ads, aren't they? And as you were talking, I was thinking, I looked up last night where the word office comes from, because I actually didn't know. And it's, opus, work, and facere, to do, and officium, meaning duty or service. And it feels like, well, now most people aren't working because they feel duty or service. They're in choice of how I want to live and the career and what I want to do and part of my why. So if they are in choice, maybe the office is now, we take the chance to redefine it. It's a high-performing environment where we have health, well-being, psychology, productivity, collaboration. We're creating new environments. There's a whole new way of communicating why we come in and collaborate together. It just feels like a real opportunity, this conversation, to think about what that could be. Well, what could be in the future, and how we communicate it.
I am so glad you've rounded us off, because that was a perfect rounding off. Let's pick that up in a minute, Derek. We're all going to do little cameos. Isn't that exciting?